So that video was sent to me by Raphael in our chat. I'm gonna send you one more that we have to play. It's coming through now. I thought I sent it already and I must have forgot.
Okay.
But he sends me on Instagram some of the funniest like Protestant stuff, you know. Wait till you hear this one. This one goes right along with our last episode on UFOs. All right, it should be coming through right now.
Okay. Just funny because a minute ago you were talking about how nervous you used to get about dead air.
Yeah, I know. All right, you got it now, right?
Yeah, I got it now. Give me a second.
All right, let's play it. Play it real quick.
Okay, here we go.
That's right, everybody. Sound the shofar because it's happening. We're here. The rapture's happening, guys. It's happening right now. If you all saw the news, the government confirmed that the aliens and the UFOs exist. Now, if you've been following my newsletter, or if you've been a partner of my ministry for some time, you'll know that that's actually just a cover-up. None of that's real. That's just something the Catholics put out to convince everybody about what happened after the rapture happens, and they miss it. They're going to miss it because they didn't believe it like we did, and they had to do the alien thing because they know the rapture is going to happen, but when it doesn't happen, they have to have an excuse, so they're just going to say it was an alien abduction. Now, I do want to provide something just in case anybody here misses the rapture. You know,
I was going to say that's another
it's
minute
just
long.
silly nonsense like that, but that's from Raphael. All right, everybody. I'm a little nervous tonight because I'm not used to interviewing people, and I get really nervous when I have interviews. But no, we have Nancy Charles on tonight, who I've been really looking forward to having on. And I told her, don't be nervous at all, because I'm going to ask a million questions tonight. But before we get going, hit like, hit subscribe if you guys have not yet, because I think 40% of our audience does not subscribe. Last I checked.
I blame you.
Yeah, I do too. So 40% are not subscribed. Please like, subscribe. We do have a locals. If you guys want to help support our show, please give that a consideration, because me and Rob do put a lot into this show. But forget all that. We're done grifting. Nancy, how are you?
I'm doing actually pretty well, actually. Thank you for having me on the show. And I have to say, first and foremost, that I really, really am grateful. One, to the podcast, because I actually watched this early on in my conversion, which is funny. It was a relief for me. I'd watched your show a lot, and then on top of that, I really appreciate just all the masses that you guys offered up for me, and that was a really nice thing. So I really
So all right, so I guess Josh had told. All right, so if anybody doesn't know, her brother is Joshua Charles, who we've had on the show I think 3 times now. But we had Joshua on, and then he had told me that he had told me before you even converted or anything, he said, hey, just keep my sister in your prayers. She had a really a pretty miraculous conversion to the faith over the last few months, and she's considering coming into the church and all this. And he was telling me just some of the background. It just blew me away. And then he told me that you were watching our show, and I'm like, are you insane? I hope she finds better things to watch than this, because we're not exactly the best show to watch. But
no, it was down to earth, and I appreciated that. Yeah, no, I liked it.
I'm happy. I'm happy we provided some comic relief, or comedy relief. But I honestly, I want to go all the way back to what I guess let's go back to like your childhood and just kind of tell us what was the upbringing like in the Charles home?
Well, first and foremost, I feel like I was raised in a really lovely home with 2 very loving parents. We had everything, you know, that we always needed provided for us, you know, 2 hard workers, working parents. I mean, always had 2 parents in the home, at least until I had graduated from college. And then that's when my parents divorced. And that was a whole nother time in my life. But yeah, I don't think it was, I wouldn't have looked back and said it was anything like abnormal or anything crazy, because I feel like that's everybody's childhood though. You know, you look back and you're like, that just is what it is, you know? But we grew up going to church, Protestant church. And sort of as the years went on, I think Josh was the only one who kept going to church, which, you know, thankfully for that, to be honest. But I guess we went to church, and I never really, well, that's a whole nother story. Sorry. I'm like trying to figure out where to start, but.
Well, did you, when you were going to church, did you believe in God when you were going, or was it kind of just like a cultural thing you were doing?
No, so I actually did. Oh, okay, so here's where it gets weird. So I grew up going to church, and I think I definitely believed, but I never really had a relationship. And part of it was, you know, I think there's a lot of reasons behind why that is, but I did believe. And actually, funny, I actually used to pray to. This is I've always had a connection to the angels. I don't know why, and I remember always hearing the story about you know. Mary, and you know, being told that she's gonna have you know, a baby, and yeah, Gabriel came down, and you know, all that stuff. And I remember that was so cool, and I would pray as a little girl, like, and I asked God if he could, like, can I see an angel? I just wanted to see an angel, and it never happened. But I think I got angels in different ways, and so I did pray. But from a very young age, my relationship with God was very skewed early on, due to some other things that happened in our house. I mean, I was sexually molested at a young age by my older cousin. And I remember that was during a time I would have been like 5 or 6 years old.
It was a male cousin?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How much older was he?
You know, that's a great, I thought about that. I've thought about that a lot, actually. I don't know off the top of my head. We'll say that I was in grade school and he was in high school.
Okay.
Because I don't know exactly. There's a lot of things I don't remember, and I think that's a sign of, like, you know, it's the first sign of, like, traumatic experiences, is you don't remember a lot. So I lose a lot of stuff in that way. But anyway, that happened, and it happened for a while. Actually, it wasn't like a one-off. It was it happened, I would say, consistently every time we met with him. Over, I like to arbitrarily say over the course of a year, but it could have been longer. Yeah. I just don't know. And what that did was, I remember from a very young age, I had a lot of shame around that, because it was something I had to hide, first of all, and hiding it. You know, when you're raised in a Christian with Christian values and stuff, you know, that there's like stigmas around all these things. Like, you don't know, even, you know, you're a young kid and you're still trying to, like, figure out yourself and your body and, like, what's going on. These are things you should not be exposed to. And yet here I am feeling like I have to be quiet about it, but I also am, like, suffering on the inside and I can't say anything. And that's like the weight that a 6-year-old has to carry. You know what I mean? Imagine that. And it was not something I struggled, because I already had, from a very young age, felt like I was beyond repair. And I thought the rules of Christianity were just that. I didn't know about anything other than, so for instance, like, you know, I knew that there was always, like, the no sex before marriage kind of thing and all that stuff. But I thought, well, that already, I'm done then. And so I was already, like, I had already kind of considered myself to be, like, you know, even though, and I couldn't just determine in the early ages if I had, like, allowed it to happen or not. I had a lot of, you know, thoughts about that as well. And so, yeah, it really kind of skewed how my relationship with God, from that point.
Oh my goodness. I you know what it is? I mean, first off, you hear stories like this, and they're so hard to even know how to react to them, because it's such a traumatic thing. But you're right about our survival instinct kind of buries these things so that we can continue on with it. I mean, maybe I'll tell the story in the locals one day, but I actually was telling Rob and a couple of our friends in a group about something that happened to me as a teenager with one of my friend's moms. And I was kind of like, they basically were like dude, that wasn't okay. So I'll have to tell that on locals because I don't think that's something I should really be speaking about so publicly. But it's
no, that's it's funny actually. If I don't mind saying one more thing, it's funny because on that point, it's very true. I very much not only hid it, but I came to live with it in a way that it actually didn't really affect my day-to-day life. Not in the way that I thought it kind of blew my life up later on. It was something that kind of like hit me like I couldn't imagine much later in life, but it's just getting through. I put it off to I guess on the back burner. And so much so that I guess I don't even remember this, but my parents said they had taken me because we didn't have a lot of money growing up. And so my mom had taken me to the pastor. The pastor's wife had a therapy degree, and she was a counselor, and she offered us services for free because she knew we didn't have money. So I went to the church, and she said, we took you for months. And she's like, you just didn't say anything. You didn't say anything at all.
How old were you when she brought you there?
It would have been like around 6-7 years old.
So wait, you told your parents that this happened?
No, they found out because the last time it happened, it was at a family barbecue, and I had come out of the back room, and I was wearing these little swim trunk kind of things, and there was a Velcro, right? And my Velcro was undone, and I hadn't put it back together all the way, and I came out and basically, it was kind of like if someone's zipper was down, and you just tell someone, hey, your zipper's down, pull it up. Well, my mom was doing that to me. And in that moment, I thought she had found out everything because I was just terrified. And so she said, hey, your zipper, she basically said that. And instead of me just like putting it together, I like froze like a deer in the headlight. And she knew right then and there, like the mom radar went up, and she was like, and so she grabbed me, her and my aunt, we went into my, to the living room, and she put me down on the, and from that point, I just went stone cold. I didn't say anything. I just stared off into space, and I didn't say anything. I don't really remember much after that. I do remember that. Well, I won't share that on camera, but there's some things that happened after.
Yeah, look, we have to be very delicate about this. Because I don't want you to share anything you're not comfortable sharing at all. So
Sure.
like, don't feel obligated to say something you're not comfortable saying. It's so hard to discuss some of these things sometimes.
Sure.
So I really don't want you to think you have. I'm trying to get it. I mean, the thing is, we all have these traumas that happen to us as kids. I mean, you obviously had something very severe that happened to you, but I don't want you to feel an obligation.
No, and I'm an open book. So okay. It doesn't bother me much. I've gone through a lot of therapy, so
okay.
So we're good.
So okay, yeah. So that happens. Was there anything I'm missing from that portion that you want to?
I will say that, well, I don't know if the audience knows truly my background. I went on to basically lead a LGBT lifestyle for 15 years. And the only thing I would say about my childhood is that during that time, I think that really spoiled the way I viewed men in a big way. And I would have never told you that when I was living in the lifestyle. I would have never, right. And I honestly didn't connect it to that, quite frankly. But looking back and having done a lot of work, as you're going through developmental years, and you're having these weird feelings that, all I knew is I wanted to be close to, I needed an emotional connection with strong women.
So about what age did you start realizing that?
I knew the first time I knew that I had same-sex attraction, I was third grade because I had a crush on my teacher. And I won't say her name, but I had a crush on my teacher, and it was just a little child, crush, but that was the first time I knew. But also one thing you have to remember too, is that when young kids go through, when they're introduced to sexual things at a young age, that doesn't stop there. You know what I mean? Now I'm introduced to it. I know about it. So I was partaking in things consistently throughout my childhood, with other kids maybe, or with, it was just because I didn't know. It was just like a lot of, so yeah, that was about all around the same time, but third grade is when I knew about that.
Wow. So, okay. So then third grade. So now, how old are you? I don't mean, I know that's like not a question you're not supposed to ask, but
no, I'm not worried about it. I'm 33.
Okay. So you're 33. So I'm trying to get an idea of your, what it's like, what the climate is like in high school for you. Cause you're 8 years younger than me. So when I was in high school, if a kid had same-sex attraction, it was never as bad for girls, but if there was a guy with same-sex attraction, we would torture him. I mean, it was not back in the 90s, it wasn't a fun time for kids struggling with that. It really wasn't.
Right.
I'm about the same age as Nancy, and I wouldn't say we didn't ever.
It wasn't celebrated like today, right?
No, it wasn't celebrated, but there was more of a niche for it, I think.
Yeah. So I think I know where you're going. I will say that high school was the least of my worries.
Oh,
My
okay.
biggest fear was that I'd lose my family.
Mhm.
And I had I had a fear that like I could not describe it. It overtook my entire childhood. There was not a day that I went by that I did not try my best to. I presented very feminine. I went over the top. I and I would just I tried my very best to be to basically be what I thought people wanted me to be, so that they wouldn't know the truth of what I was going through. And that my issue was not whether I was going to get bullied at school. My issue was if my family knew, they would not love me. And that was the same thing, because I had already had that talk with God, as far as I was concerned. I thought, God already didn't love me. And that's kind of where it became too painful that's where my disbelief in God had to, as a defense mechanism, it started slowly going down from that point throughout my life, because it's too painful to think that you could be created by something and not good enough for that thing at the same time and not know how to fix that. Because you have to remember too, I also didn't know that the attraction wasn't a sin. You know what I mean? Like that to me was the sin. So I couldn't separate myself from it. Like there was no way, there was no out. Yeah. And I withheld from acting on it for so long. And actually the day I told my mom, that was the first day I tried killing myself. That was one of my first of many attempts, because I couldn't handle the shame.
How old were you when you finally told your mom?
It was after the divorce of my parents, and that's when my whole life just kind of fell apart. That's another thing. I was 18, 19, maybe. I was in college, first year of college, and I actually couldn't even tell her. I forced her to kind of say the words, because I was just too broken. And
that's a harder age to go through with something like a divorce than most people realize, I think.
Oh man, it shattered. Well, because I felt like everything I'd ever known just was gone,
So because I think a lot of people assume, I think the parents sometimes assume, well, our kids are older now, they'll understand.
Keep it together until they're out of the house, basically.
Yeah.
But I think even at 18, I think even kids that their parents split in their 20s or 30s, it's still a hard look that your family is getting ripped apart. And what is home at that point? Like, where's home?
Right.
What do you mean? What if something happens? Where do I go? Where is home? Divorce is such a traumatizing thing. I feel so bad for families that have to go through it.
Yeah. So that's
okay. So you tell your mom around 18, right? When your parents split up. Now you said you actually tried to take your life. That was the first time. What is it like going through your 20s, going through college? I mean, this is trying to think what year this is. This is about 10 years ago. So
I graduated in 2008. So it would have been 2008, 2009, maybe 2010.
You have the movement at that point. I mean, it's everywhere at that point. I mean,
oh yeah, it was not a shameful thing at that point. Plus I'm in college. It's very liberal. It was not an unsafe. I never worried about the safeness of coming out or to the world. It was about losing the things that I loved the most. It's just an abandonment wound. You know what I mean? So yeah, no, at that time, parents get divorced, and I start college. And honestly, I had always been raised in like sort of a sheltered home. So I didn't have a lot of that. I was a very good kid all through high school. I was, I wasn't like Josh. I wasn't straight A's, but I worked very hard for my A, B's, and C's. And I was a varsity athlete in 3 different sports. So I had a lot going for me. In fact, actually looking back, most people would have never, ever thought, they would have never pinned me for the kind of person that took the route that I ended up taking, with just the drugs and other things. Cause I mean, when I say I fell apart, I literally fell apart.
What kind of drugs were you using?
What wasn't I using? The first round. So I started, partying in school. And then I realized, wow, this is a relief, and I was just finally doing things that everybody else had always done. And It started with just like, alcohol, weed, and cocaine, lots of cocaine. And then in college,
Cocaine is the devil's drug. Like
yeah,
people don't realize that because I mean I had a very rough young adult life myself. It was really bad. And the only reason I'm asking is because I mean I went through a phase with that. I went through a phase with Adderall. I went through a phase with OxyContin. If there's anyone that could relate to this,
yeah.
I can empathize with going through struggling with substance abuse.
Right. Actually, yeah, Adderall was I would say my most consistent drug of choice through my entire 15 years of addiction.
Yeah.
I mean, I was buying multiple people's scripts off them. I had multiple doctors giving me my own script based on just me Googling the things I needed to say. It was bad. And I was doing also a lot of like psychedelics. A lot of anything. I would come down. It was like round the clock. It was round the clock, and my studies were struggling. I was on academic probation. Finally, eventually, just led me to drop out.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I just was like.
Okay, so you were very good in school. You get into college. You're doing really good. Your parents split up. You come out to your parents. You start getting into the drugs, and it gets so bad that you wind up dropping out of college.
Well, yeah. So what happened, it was kind of a forced dropout in a weird way that I just never ended up going back to because I ended up overdosing. And thankfully my drug dealer at the time and one of my other, I guess you could say friends, acquaintances, noticed that I was out of it. I had passed out and he happened to be like a CNA. So he saw that I had a pill bottle on me. And it was my Ativan, and he knew we'd been drinking and partying all day. Like we did coke, we did weed came with everything, obviously alcohol. I had 240 ounces of Miller High Life right before, and he had done a pill count. And he saw that I had my prescription filled earlier the day before, and so I should have had a full bottle, but I had nothing in there. So I had gone through about 40 pills of Ativan within that period. And I blacked out and I passed out. And so they basically took me to the emergency room and dropped me off. And I woke up in ICU the next day. I don't really remember anything. Everyone just kind of tells me their versions of the story. To this day, I don't remember. But that was my first overdose. I've had several more occur since. But after that, that was my first time in the mental health hospital too, because apparently I had told them, I don't remember any of this, but that was when I had said I was trying to kill myself. And then why don't you just let me die? You know what I mean? All these things, which doesn't surprise me. I knew, I was like, yeah, that sounds like me. It was almost a weird relief to know that like I had told somebody, because I consciously didn't have it in me to tell anybody that what I was going through. So,
so you're what, around 20 when this happens?
I was 20, probably 23 by this point. I had stuck it out for a couple of years of just hardcore.
So now, that first overdose, your family knows about it happening?
Yeah, my dad actually showed up to the emergency room, and apparently I had yelled at him to get out of here. I didn't want, the divorce was still going on in some ways, and there's some fallout, and we're very good now. I love my father dearly. I'm so grateful for him, but my mom was in California when it happened, so she couldn't be there. But I had,
Where were you going to school?
University of Idaho is where I was attending. Okay.
So your dad came, where was your dad living at this time?
He was living in Moscow, Idaho, which is where the university is located.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
At least you had him close. Okay.
Yeah. Hindsight, I'm grateful for that. So I ended up going out to the mental health hospital. I stayed there for about a week or so. And meanwhile, my family's like, getting together, and they're like, we got to do something. And then I get shipped out basically to Las Vegas. Funny enough, it's where I went for my first rehab. So I stayed out there to get clean. I've never actually had the Vegas experience. I went to Vegas to get sober. Isn't that funny? I love
it's funny, like how when you're talking about something so dark, but you really do develop a gallows humor through.
Oh man, I have the darkest humor.
It's the only way you can really get through a lot of these things is by laughing at some of these things that are just, it's like, I didn't get to go have fun in Vegas. I was in a mental health hospital, but that is really a coping mechanism that we develop from going through a lot of stuff like that. So
Yeah.
Okay, so you're 23. This happens. All right. So now you're in the mental. How long did you stay there for?
I stayed in the mental health, the rehab. I was there for 3 months, in-house rehab. I was full 3 months. And then I moved to LA after that really quickly because I underestimated recovery. I thought the drugs were my issue. I think most addicts do. They're like, well, once I get clean, I'll be fine. Yeah. That was just a symptom of the issue. And I didn't realize at the time. And so I moved to LA and I get a job out there and I'm living with my aunt and uncle. And I actually relapsed pretty quickly, except this time it's with heroin. So I'm shooting heroin. And I realized really quickly, because I had a lot of shame after that. I felt like I just a total failure. I was like, wow, like my family did so much to help me get into rehab, and this is like how I repay them. And so I actually ended up calling my mom and was like, and I just womaned up, if you will, and basically said, I need help. I'm sorry, I messed up again, and can I come home? And she lived in Sacramento at the time. And that's when I never moved away so quickly from a place in my life. I literally went back to where I was living, put as much as I could fit in my Honda Civic, and drove home that night. And I was itching and kind of detoxing a little bit the whole way there. Like, it was pretty gnarly. So
hearing, like, if I didn't know the ending, this would be such a hard story for me to hear, because look, we all struggle with, family members that go through stuff like this. I mean, my younger brother, it sounds like you're telling his story. I mean, if you knew how long it went by that I was waiting for a phone call to tell me that my younger brother died. Yeah. Because my brother went through heroin. He was injecting coke for a while. It's just, when you have family members who struggle with this, when you know addiction yourself, it's just such a harrowing experience to go through, because you really don't know if the next time you get high is the last time you get high. It's people don't know, if they haven't dealt with it, how dangerous it is. You're playing with your life every time you get high.
Yeah, that's one, when you're in the thick of it, you don't really think that way until you're out of it. It's I don't know how many times I've had this thought, like, I don't know why I'm still alive, you guys. Like, I don't understand it. I really shouldn't be. So I'm incredibly grateful that Lord, showed me who he was before I took the inevitable last, walk. But yeah.
Okay, so you call your mom and you tell her, you ask her, and she lets you come home.
Yeah, she lets me come home, and I get back to Sacramento, and I was able to sweat that out a little bit. I ended up going to an outpatient rehab because we couldn't afford regular rehab, right?
So wait, you just detox from it? You didn't go into Suboxone or anything like that?
No, because I wasn't really on heroin that long. I wasn't a consistent user. Okay. So I had like the itches. Like, I don't know if you've ever come off of like like any pain medication. Yeah. If you go on it too long, then you'll have like all that stuff. And thankfully I did not have all that stuff. I had just the wanting to crawl out of my skin and a lot of sweating through the sheets. But it didn't get worse than that. And I stayed away from, I was more of an upper. If I could have uppers, I just kind of, but so yeah, thankfully that wasn't the case for me. But I came home and I kept smoking weed mostly. That was what I did. I actually I took whatever was available to me when it was available to me, but I was still very much like lying to my parents and hiding all this, from them. I mean, my mom had a few surgeries once, and she had like been sent home, and she's very sensitive to medication. She does not like taking those. She's like the only person I've ever known in my life who can get a thing of oxys and take like 3 of them, and then it'll expire in her cabinet. I'm like, how is that even possible?
Yeah, my mom's like that too.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, so I mean, it naturally presented a thing for me. I remember I got so desperate for her medication one time, and this is just how terrible I am. She had bought a lock for her door. Like, we've gone through it. I kept stealing my mom's pills, and I had they're out one day, and I had gone to the garage, and I grabbed a ladder and went to the top floor because their window wasn't closed. They didn't close their window, and I literally got on the roof, went through the window, and grabbed them that way. Like, that's the kind of person. It's pretty gnarly.
It's crazy because you could tell these stories in a way now, but at the time it's just you don't realize where your mind goes. It's almost like you're a vampire when you're
Right.
going through something like that. You don't care about any of the consequences. You don't care who you hurt. You just want what you want, and nothing else matters.
Right.
It's crazy when you're going through something like that. So
Yeah. No, it's very true. I put my mom through a lot. She's a saint for sure.
yeah.
So, so yeah, I'm doing that. I work in, the one thing I think, I've always had a job, consistent job. That was the one thing I always had in my name. I was always a hard worker. I always excelled at work. I always got promoted at work, you know, so thankfully I always had a job. But I ended up doing that for a while, just staying there. And then eventually I get out. I get out on my own and I go and actually live with my stepsister and her husband. Well, her husband, because they had an extra room in their apartment and I'm paying rent and living there. And I hit another low, and that low resulted in, oh my gosh. Well, yeah. So I ended up hitting another low, and then I came home to an intervention. Essentially, the whole family's like, "You gotta, what is happening?" And so I went to rehab a second time. I was gracious this time. A friend had that I knew had actually paid for the entire thing out of pocket. I went there for 2 months, in-house rehab again. And at that point, I actually ended up staying sober after that for 4 years. I had one little blip right before I became Catholic that lasted 3 months. And that
so you're 4 years clean now. Are you going to meetings every day? Are you taking your sobriety seriously?
So no, because okay. It's so weird actually. I don't actually go to meetings anymore. And I haven't for a while, but
well, the only reason I say that, like okay, so I never did either. I was able to, I really think the meetings are, Catholicism is my meeting.
Right.
It is my meaning. Like my religion is my life. And I think for a lot of people that have to go to meetings, it's because you need to replace the thing you had with something that is all encompassing,
right.
Something that is your whole life.
Right.
And that's why they're religious about going to meetings.
Right.
You know, and where I am just religious. So it never became that for me either, you know? So
I did for a while. For the first few years, I was pretty adamant about it. And then I slowly stopped going around like the third or fourth year, give or take. And I was doing really great, actually. It wasn't, but then, you know, my mental health issues never went away. I always struggled with depression. And I think what I wasn't finding in the rooms was I was trying to talk about things that, you know, that a lot of times, you know, when you get a sponsor in the rooms, you know, you talk about, they'll walk you through the steps and, you know, all that stuff. But what I needed to talk to was something about the things I was going through internally, and everybody would always be like, well, that's not really for the rooms. You know, we don't really do that here. You got to go find a therapist. But I had the hardest time trying to find therapy. And I'm fully insured, but it's just, you know, I had the hardest time finding therapy. I had Kaiser, and they would only give me a therapy session once every month. And I was like, by the time I met with my therapist again, they didn't even know basically who I was. And it's just like, no, you don't get it. Like, I need like weekly therapy or something. So that's a whole nother thing. I ended up getting that, but it was a while. And so I ended up getting so depressed that I couldn't even get out of bed. I literally I was done. And that's when I had relapsed. I had another brief relapse with methamphetamine because it was the only thing that would get me up. And I did that for 3 months. And then finally, my mom basically asked me, she was like, you're not right. Like, something's not right. And she asked me, well, I can't remember now how it went, but.
So this is 4 years of being clean.
Correct. Yeah. 4 years of being clean. Everybody thinks it's in the back burner. Like, no, it's never going to happen again. And here I am again. Like at a low, and I'm telling you right now, meth is one heck of a drug. It took me down and out fast. Like, I was having health problems. I had my brother who was, I couldn't get out of bed one day because I had a major kidney infection that just hit me, and my brother had to like basically carry me to his car and take me to the emergency room. And we didn't know what was going on. It really damaged my body and quick. Several autoimmune diseases that popped up in the midst of that, just because
it really rots your body out.
Oh yeah,
it rots your body out. You like people that use meth, you see their teeth fall out. I mean, it is so traumatic what that drug does to a person's body.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it was a few months prior to that. I mean, I literally, I was so desperate to get out of bed because I was on the verge of losing everything. When I say I thought I had known what depression was, I had no idea what depression was until this bout. I literally could not get out of bed. I can't describe it any way other than that. It was literally like
people that don't struggle with depression. It seems like a crazy thing. It's not something, because I mean, I have so many family members that struggle with depression that it's just such a sad thing, because it's not that they don't want to get better. It's just there's something going on in them where they don't even have the will to get up out of bed to live.
Yeah.
It's such a scary thing, depression.
Well, it is. I mean, and I don't know, I can't speak for everybody because everyone, I'm sure, arrives at it in different ways. But for me, I was losing hope. Like I had been fighting for the better part of 15 years to try to find meaning, to make sense of my life. I mean, at this point, I felt like the most like an utter failure beyond anything you could ever imagine. I felt like I was a weight on my family and I couldn't figure it out. I was very aware at this point of what this was doing to my family, and the fact that I also felt like I couldn't fix it either. It was so weird. It was like, just make the right choices. It's like, what are the right choices? I don't even know what that means. Like, you know what I mean? I have so much anxiety that I'm battling. I mean, I can't even function in society, right? Like, I'm like, attempt to do anything at all. And I'm like breaking down just due to like panic attacks and this and that. And so it was really very debilitating. And I felt like nobody understood me. Nobody understood. I couldn't describe it either. And I felt like even if I tried to describe it, I felt kind of like selfish for doing that, because it was like, I already knew whatever everyone thought in a weird way. Like, it was kind of like, well, do you know what you're putting us through? And it was like, yeah, I do. In a way I do, but I also don't know. It was such a very weird feeling to not know how to fix something and so that's part of what led me to want it. I was the final, like I said, I ended up, this is ultimately what brought me to God, actually, is my last almost suicide attempt, because I didn't actually end up attempting. But do you want me to just get into that part?
Well, before you even do that, like, what are you, do you have girlfriends through this period? What's going on? Like, what kind of relationships are you dealing with? Are you hearing all the nonsense propaganda that's going on around you that you might not be a girl? What's going on? No, because seriously, this is what's going on in the world around us during this time period, right?
Yeah. I'm actually glad you brought that up. So yes. On to the trans thing. So yeah, throughout college, I had always, I had girlfriends here and there, nothing too serious. I did have, prior to COVID, I had a pretty serious relationship with somebody who we lived together. We shared a home. We shared animals. We were together for about a couple years. And
did she use?
No, she didn't at all. In fact, actually, most of the time we were together, I didn't use it all at all. I was clean.
Okay. So you, all right.
Yeah, but that breakup was actually very, very hard for me. There was I can get into that in a second, but that was it rocked my world. And then we went into COVID and I lived alone. So I spent most of my time alone, just inside.
Were you clean during COVID? COVID was a clean period?
Yeah. Literally just up until like, actually I'm coming up this Thanksgiving. I'll have another year under my belt clean.
Okay.
So,
so your relapse was about a year ago.
It was right. It was
So
literally
you had a
like,
3-month relapse about a year ago. Okay.
yeah.
So COVID. So you have that breakup, and during COVID, you're alone this whole period. And are you going through depression during COVID?
Oh my gosh. Massive depression. I was a operations manager working for Amazon at the time. So I had a really good job. I was really getting paid well, which was the start of a really wonderful career. And I come home every night to nothing, nobody could even, hang out if we wanted to, because the whole world shut down. And actually, this is funny. This is what people do. I was still looking for truth. I was still looking for something to fill the void that I was, so drugs wasn't doing anymore. And in fact, at the time I didn't have drugs because I was so clean, and I hadn't considered going that route because I knew what that would be. So I don't know, this is actually, I forgot to mention this. I ended up taking a weird little right turn into, we'll call it a left turn, into tarot cards and like the occult stuff, but I didn't know it was occultish. I ran to a video on YouTube, and it was like, oh, we'll tell you how what's going to happen for you in the month of May, and you're a Taurus, and you know what I mean? Like, and I was just like, it's like reading a fortune cookie. It's like, oh, it's just a little bit of a hit, that makes you feel like you can hang on for just a little bit longer. And so I actually got really into those, and I ended up buying a bunch of tarot cards and all this stuff, and just thinking like, and then it's funny, I actually told my brother, I was like, oh yeah, I have these like tarot cards. And he goes, what? And I was like, don't worry, they're angel cards. They're angel cards.
So is this before or after COVID?
This is during COVID.
So this is right when Josh converts to Catholicism.
Yeah, probably around the same time.
You have tarot cards.
And I'm like, I'll do a reading for you,
He's probably like, going to get an exorcist for you, because all right, so for anybody that doesn't know, Josh converts. Josh was Mike Pence's speechwriter. He's Protestant, and then he becomes Catholic, and he comes into the church. Comes in Easter 2019 or 2020, like his first
2019, because I think it's 2019.
Yeah, so 2019.
He didn't come in at Easter, right? Because his first Easter in the church was COVID,
yeah,
and he didn't get to go.
COVID.
Right.
So he's like Catholic a few months, and all of a sudden the whole church gets shut down. There's no sacraments, and he's like, "What is going on?" And now his sister's reading tarot cards. He really must have thought the apocalypse was coming. This guy, that's pretty crazy.
That is funny. Yeah, no, I had no idea that they were like. I didn't know that nobody explains to you the full truth of what you're getting into. It's very presented, very, you know what I mean? Like, whatever, And so I told him about it. Like, just obviously I didn't know, because I wouldn't have told him probably. But I told him, and I was like, yeah, I got these, and he goes, throw them away. You need to go home, throw them away right now. And I was like, why? And he goes, he's like, those aren't angels, those are demons. Like, you throw them away. And I was like, and he said demon, in my brain, like, I don't mess around. Like, that was like enough for me. I listened to him. I went home, and I threw every deck away. Like I was done. Like, I just had no idea. But so I got into that for a little bit. And this is around the time that I would say the 2 years I spent inside my house isolated is around the time that I started. So the transgender conversation came in. There's speckles of it throughout childhood, but it comes to full fruition around this time. So the speckles of it was, I actually had a childhood friend who was, and they play with me on my basketball team. And for my whole childhood, they would always tell me like, oh yeah, you're definitely trans, dude. Just like change, just like, transition, you'll be so much happier. And I was like, dude, I don't think that I am. Like, I don't know. I don't really feel that way. Yeah. I just feel like I like dressing in basketball shorts and stuff, like that's just more comfortable.
Just more tomboy.
Yeah, that's exactly. And I was a tomboy, and they would always, always say that to me. And I just, for years, they told me this, and I just was like, nah, I don't think so. And then around the time I went to rehab the second time, I actually had a therapist who looked at me, and mind you, I'm in the most vulnerable place in my life, trying to get clean and not doing well mentally. And this therapist, the first thing she says to me is, oh, well, clearly you're struggling with gender dysphoria. And I had never heard, this is before pronouns started becoming a thing. This is right before the onslaught of everything we see started happening. And I was like, what do you mean? What's gender dysphoria? And she goes, oh, it's, you're struggling with your gender expression. And I was like, I still don't know what you mean. Like, and she was like, well, you ever felt like you wanted to be a boy? And I was like, I mean, not really. And she goes, are you sure? She's like, yeah, you definitely. She's like, you could tell me. And I was like, and I felt like I didn't know what to say. I was like,
So
and I asked her, I was like, is it because my hair? Like, is it because my hair's short? Because I had short hair. Like, I'm growing it out now.
Yeah.
But it's, I've always had very short hair, buzz cut, like,
I mean,
whatever.
listen, you're a 20-something-year-old girl attracted to other girls. Of course, you're going to look the part, right? I mean, yeah, my heart goes out to young people who, especially young girls, because they're the most susceptible to it, who are struggling with same-sex attraction, because there's no such thing as a lesbian anymore. They are pulling these girls into this movement.
Yeah.
And it's scary what they're doing to them, because you could have somebody go through a phase and then they could have a conversion like you do. Yeah. And they could be doing irreparable harm to their body through this vulnerable period that they're in, that it's really a scary thing.
It's the evil attached to this movement is just, full force. I mean, it's interesting, the journey, because I went through this red pill journey, if you will, prior to the Catholic journey, and it was like that led into this some way. So I started by saying, it's funny, I was like struggling. I thought that I was struggling internally. I couldn't talk about these things with anybody. I didn't want to. And so then all of a sudden society starts asking people what their pronouns are. Yeah. And that whole thing just starts kind of coming in. That was the first phase of like really where we saw this conversation happen. And actually, I don't think most people will know this unless you were, I guess, a lesbian or like a gay dude, somebody who is like visibly, possibly gay from the outside, right? Mm-hmm. But we were asked, there was a time in the pronoun movement, if you will, where we were the only people who were asked what our pronouns were. Yeah. It was just the people who might have looked like they might have pronouns. Yeah. And so all of a sudden I started getting this question constantly. And honestly, it really upset me. I didn't like it. It made me uncomfortable. I didn't know why people kept asking me it. And then it got to the point where this question not only made me uncomfortable, but it just was in my head so often. I was like, well, I don't know, like, and then it started to where now
it was a form of conditioning.
Right. And it was constant. And then I was like, and then if I didn't have an answer, I started getting like weird vibes from people who were like, would kind of look at me like, what do you mean you don't have an answer? Like, and then I was like, I don't know, man. Like, what do you mean? Like, I'm a girl. What do I look like? And they're like, well, I don't know. Like, and so, anyway, that started happening. And so I'm like going through this. This is probably a few years in the making. And then I have that therapist who tells me like, no, this is what you are. And I'm like, I don't know about that. And then I got mad at her and I told her, I was like, why is it because my hair is short? I said, I don't think that's a very like clinical assessment.
Seriously.
You should look at someone's haircut and like think that. And she's like, no, that's not just what it is. It's your whole aura. I'm like, my whole aura? What does that even mean? That's not clinical, language. Like I need help, but that's not what I came in to talk about. She goes, okay, well, we don't have to talk about that right now, but if you want to talk about it later. I ended up never seeing her again.
Yeah. Good.
But that stuck in my mind for a couple of years. And then when I went through my breakup with my last girlfriend, that was probably the hardest breakup I'd ever gone through. And actually, it's funny enough, I was cheated on by this person and she cheated on me with another man. And that really pressed my buttons in a way that I felt like, man, here's something I'm never going to be able to provide this relationship. Yeah. And that kind of threw me full force. It was like almost a weird camel that broke the straw that broke the camel's back of like, I need to become a man because this can't happen again. It'll destroy me next time. Like it's so weird how that insecurity just like festered. And then all these years of people telling me, oh, you are this, from even just being a young kid to my friend telling me, to this now therapist telling me. And so finally I was like, I don't know. And there was still a pool in me that was like, this isn't like right, but like, what's stopping me? Look, when you don't have God, you don't have a frame of reference for how anything should be. Everything is okay. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like there is no, so it's not actually and yet I still had this internal like sort of like nudge that was like, no, like you got to hold on for a second. Now, I didn't tell people that because I didn't want people talking me out of it. In fact, I kind of started falling into that whole like, well, if you talk me out of it, then you must not support me kind of thing. But I never expressed that to people because I knew this was going to be a hard thing. And the worst thing was like, I don't know how I'm going to tell my mom. Because like at this point, I have a lot of friends who are trans and I have a lot of friends in the gay community. And one thing that really turned me off in many ways to the gay community early on, in fact, actually the whole time I was in it, if you will, I always told the gay people, I was like, I'm not actually in your community. I just happen to do this. And because they would always invite me to Pride and stuff like that. And side note, I actually never went to a Pride. I've never been to one. I was always like the bad gay person.
There's something about your whole personality that doesn't seem like it conforms to that.
No, it didn't. Well, and it bothered me. I was really upset with like the depravity in these. I was like, okay, if I can't bring a child to this, which now I would never bring a child.
Of course, yeah.
At the time, the standard for that, whether to bring a child or not, was like, I don't need a child to be seeing naked people walking on the streets. You know
like,
what I mean?
even before you have your conversion, you know this.
I knew it. Oh yeah, I used to get in fights with my gay friends about it. They're like, "You're just a square," and I was like, "Fine, I'm a square."
You're just a square.
I don't get it. Like, if you know. So anyway, I was fully. I never went to. In fact, I told them I was like, "Well, when you guys change the name and you call it what it is, then I'll go to a gay pride parade." And they're like, "Well, what should we call it?" I was like, "A big gay party. That's what it is. Yeah. It's a party." Yeah. Call it that, I'll go, but don't call it Pride, all this stuff like that. And I didn't like the name either. That was always a weird name for me.
Yeah.
It was so weird because in the steps and going through like, you know, rehab and stuff, like we all talk about like, and you know, the whole like Pride comes before the fall. I'm like, what a weird name.
It's because God really does write his law in our hearts.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm telling you, all of us know, like because Rob and I both went through our phase where, I mean, I lived as though God did not exist for a period in my life. And during that period, I pretended there was no God.
Right.
I just like hiding from him in the garden. Like,
yeah, you know, in your heart, you know, and you could pretend and you could get away with it for a little while, but you know, in the core of your being that, this isn't right. Something's off here. So,
yeah,
okay. I keep cutting you off, but I just,
no.
I'm like relating to some of your things so much.
No, I love that hiding in the garden. Actually, that's a good visual. I've never seen it that way. I love that though, because I would say that, arguably speaking, I've never called myself an atheist. I always called myself an agnostic. Yeah. Only because my biggest thing, and when I say agnostic, I wasn't even devoted to even learning or finding if there was a God. It was just I had no idea, but I knew that I knew something could exist, and probably did, but I had no idea what that was, and I wasn't prepared to know, to be honest, because I wasn't ready to know at the time. And so anyway, so this movement's starting. I go through this really bad breakup. I'm home alone reading tarot cards for 2 years. And these, you're alone stewing with these, like everything that's happening in the world. People are asking me my pronouns constantly. I have friends telling me I'm this, therapist, all this stuff. Finally, I was like, well, I gotta see a therapist. I gotta see a therapist and maybe talk to somebody about this and ask one more time if this is what's going on. And so I ended up I wanted to go with an LGBT therapist. This is the first time I ever wanted to do that because I figured, actually it was because I assumed that they were the only ones who knew about the transgender stuff. I assumed if I went to a regular therapist, they wouldn't know because it was so new and all this stuff. And I was like, I thought that would be my best bet. So I went in, and mind you, I'm actually having pretty heavy feelings about, like, my biggest concern was if I put myself on testosterone, I'm already a mess.
Yeah.
What is this going to do to me? Like, I'm already like a few, I'm like any day now, I'm ready to just call quits. So I considered what that would do to my brain, my chemicals in my brain, and the changes and like all this stuff. And so I wanted questions when I met with this therapist. I actually wanted those questions, and I actually wanted, in a weird way, I wanted someone to convince me that this wasn't actually a viable option. I thought anybody with a brainstem would be able to look at me and say, yeah, you're not mentally, physically, like, you're not cut out for this transition. Like, this is not a good step for you right now. Or at very least, if they were somebody who supported it, they could say, at least not now.
Yeah.
There are other things we have to, but none of that happened. So I ended up telling my therapist, and actually I ended up firing her that day. And I never had the worst. I had such a horrible experience in this therapy session because I had told her everything that was going on, and I said, I just feel very broken. And naturally she took that as like, oh, well, you need a transition. And that's not what I meant. I said, I meant that I felt broken just as a human. And she goes, she said the most devastating thing to me. She said, there's nothing wrong with you. You're perfect just the way you are. And I lost
these
it.
people are, I know they think they're doing the right thing, but that is such an evil thing to tell a person who is struggling.
Yep.
That no, no, I'm not perfect the way I am. Do you have any idea what I'm going through right now? It's so monstrous, and they think they're the good guys.
Right. And so what I ended up, I actually ended up just bawling my eyes out. And I said, I remember very verbatim, I said, if this is what it feels like to be perfect, then kill me now, because I don't want it. You know what I mean? Like what if this is perfect? Where's up from here? Like, and now here I am coming to you. You're the professional, and you're telling me there's nothing wrong with me. I'm a perfect candidate.
And not just that, like you just said, okay, so the testosterone. Have you ever seen men who take testosterone? Like their minds go nuts.
Right.
Because it's one thing for a man to have natural levels of testosterone. It's another thing when you see these guys who are juiced up out of their faces. These guys are the ones who lose their minds and beat their girlfriend because they have these roid rages. How could you possibly put somebody who's already struggling with mental health issues on a drug that will have a drastic change and problem in their mental state? I don't get it.
I don't know either. But I thought it was very odd that I had more reservation as a client than she did as a therapist. And here's what's weird. So actually prior to this therapy session, I ended up telling my mom. I came out to my mom. I actually changed my name and everything to just do the social transition first. Funny enough, my name was Roman. I went by Roman. It's funny, right?
No, it's actually
ironic.
Not prophetic. Wait, what's the word I'm looking for? It's I don't know. Like, yeah, it's like prophetic.
Yeah,
you were doomed to come to the church from the very start.
Yeah, God has a sense of humor. I mean, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
So I named myself Roman, and I went by this. And I wasn't one of the people that forced everyone to call me it. It actually would have made me really uncomfortable to hear my mom try to call me Roman. That just didn't feel like right at all. But I remember my mom actually, when I told her, this poor woman, man, she just started crying.
Anthony, it was foreshadowing.
Crying. Yeah. Foreshadowing. There you go. She just started crying, and I remember the first thing she asked me, she is like, are you gonna do surgeries? And I said, I don't know. I don't know anything right now, but this is what I'm going through. And that hurt. It's funny. This is part of the disgust and I'm just being honest, this is part of the hardship. This is the wedge that started growing between me and the gay community, because I would see so many people, and the fact that there is no understanding for how this affects the people around us. I just could not understand. How do you look at your mother who is crying and who's clearly, this is a loss for her too, and not feel something?
Yeah, she's grieving the loss of her daughter.
Right.
Like you're oh man.
And so that was hard for me, and it put a really bad taste in my mouth when I had friends who were very I guess self-righteous, maybe very there's a lot of narcissism in this community. A lot of it's about me and me only. And that was when I saw that for the first time, on high alert. Anyway, I ended up firing my therapist that day because she ended up she was basically trying to explain, because I asked her, I said, I need to know how to heal. I don't want the first thing that we talk about to be like, how do I get on hormones? I said, I need to know how to heal. And the fact is that she really acted towards me as if that was an offensive thing to even suggest, because for me to suggest that I could heal would be to admit that I've been damaged. And that this was a byproduct of that damage. And I think that it's really hard for people who, especially the LGBT therapists, to separate themselves from that, because I think in a lot of ways they're damaged too, and they can't really lead me to that healing. You know what I mean? It's like they have to affirm, and so
Well, even the stuff with our parents. So your mom is in such a tough position there because, you know, this stuff's going on all around us everywhere. She doesn't even know how to handle it. You're an adult at this point. It's not like you're 15 years old telling her this, you know. It's a very difficult thing, and our parents do the best they can, but I think they don't even know how to handle these situations sometimes, you know. Like I hear something like that and I'm like, if my daughter ever came to me and said something like that, I'd lock her in a room, you know. I'm like, you're getting away from the people you're talking to, you're out of your mind. But I think as an adult, your kid comes to you and says that, and it's just such a hard thing. I mean, parents, it's not easy being a parent. So
no, it's not. Well, I can tell you what my mom did. She prayed a rosary every night for me. And
wait, your mom's Catholic?
She's becoming Catholic now.
Wait a minute. Oh, wait, I blew it. I blew the punchline. No, I shouldn't have asked yet. I'm sorry,
Anthony.
I blew the punchline. I had no idea. Okay, you got to.
You didn't know
I
that?
gotta shut up. I have no idea. I have to shut up and let you talk. I'm rude.
Yeah. So she actually, so she started praying a rosary for me, and she had taken a liking to Saint Monica, who is Saint Augustine's mom, and she prayed for him for many years. And so she resonated with that. And so she found strength in that. She had a little Saint Monica on her nightstand, and no, she's not Catholic yet. She's working on it, but that's who she found solace in. And so she kept praying her rosary, and she prayed.
Hold on, Joshua, if you're watching, this does not make you Saint Augustine.
I made him promise not to watch the live, so I wouldn't be nervous. So he's watching it later.
First off, you were worried you were going to be nervous. Are you nervous at all?
No, I'm not. No,
right? We're just having a conversation. It gets like the first few minutes are a little nerve-wracking, but once you get into it, you're just telling a story. So, what makes her pick up a rosary though? That's so crazy because I guess so. Josh had converted at this point, right?
So Josh actually had come back, and he was living with them while he was looking for a home to buy, or to whatever his deal was. And so this is actually the timeline was that he had gotten back from, he was working for the Museum of the Bible. Forgive me, Josh, if I'm butchering this. But he was working for the Museum of the Bible. This is at the point where they gave him, they told him to basically study whatever he wanted. And he said, I want to study the church fathers. And, that he was living at my parents' house while he was looking for his own home to move into. And so he was really going through this transformation while at her. So her and my stepfather watched him go through this transformation. So they got to see, and, you know, everybody who knows my brother knows that, like, when Josh does not do anything
partially, yeah. I mean, he's all in when he does something.
Well, and also when he changed that, like, it was shocking to everybody, even myself to some degree, not because I was religious, but because I was like, wow, that's huge. Like, for you, that's huge. I know my brother, you know what I mean? And so it was kind of like everybody in the family sort of like noticed. And was like
Catholic. Like, what do you mean Catholic? That's the one thing that sends you to hell, man. You can't do that.
Well, that's funny too. Actually, I don't have the preconceptions of Catholicism that a lot of Protestants do.
Oh, okay.
Because my brain was so, I never really was mentally in church because I was already, from a young age, I had been struggling. But yeah, I actually learned about all that when I came into the church, and now I've learned all since. But yeah, that's funny. He knows better because he stayed in church and stuff. But so I had no qualms about that. Anyway, but moving forward, so yeah, she started, you know, doing that because of Josh. And then my dad's Catholic now too. My dad. Oh my gosh. Look, our whole family, we just need to get my sister and she'll get in. Like, you know, like I pray for her every night. So if anyone wants to say a rosary for my sister, that'd be great. And her husband, that'd be wonderful. But we're all coming in, and that's just mind blowing if you think about like how broken we all became. Our family was from the time of the divorce to, you know, we've gone through a lot. And so the fact that Josh started, he came in, and then just weirdly enough, every single person slowly is starting to come to the church. And it's just, I mean, it's not weird, it's miraculous and it's beautiful. But I can tell you right now, never in a million years did I ever think I'd be stepping foot in a church at all. But let alone a Catholic church, I suppose. And I say that only because, you know, it's very different from the church I grew up going to. We went to, like, we had praise worship teams and, you know, silly songs, and this was nothing like, I mean, I certainly didn't, listen to church in a different language. So there's a lot of differences about
because you Latin mass, like, wait, let's So 2020 happens, you go through this whole period alone, then you relapse after 2020. What happens with this last relapse?
Well, the last relapse was around 3 months prior to the last year's Thanksgiving. I just went on a 3-month run. It was just, like I said, I was so depressed. So basically, going back to the therapy, I realized that was the point. I realized I was going to have to look for truth on my own.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that was going to be God eventually. But shout out to Jordan Peterson. I know, sorry. Somebody told me, they're like, you can listen to Jordan now, but someday you're going to have to listen to someone a little bit more. Like your depth is going to expand. But at the time, Jordan, I needed him. This man's like, what he actually kind of slowly introduced me to, like, even listening to things biblical and like breaking things down. I found his interviews to be really interesting. And he was the voice of, like, sort of what I needed to hear in certain ways, like pick up, clean up your room and, all that stuff. So he, most nights I'd fall asleep listening to, like, some of his lectures, just like it brought me comfort. And I couldn't get really any super, genuine help from any therapist. By the way, at this time in California, they've actually have laws banning therapists, not even just LGBT therapists, but just any therapist from
detransitioning or conversion.
Well, if I say that I'm feeling like I'm a man, they have to agree with that.
Yeah, they have to affirm it. Yeah.
Right. And so really now I'm the loneliest I've ever been. I actually don't know that I don't know if this is right for me. I don't know, but I don't have anybody I could talk to about this. No, I just wanted to talk about it. I could still possibly, I was on the path I wasn't putting it off the table. I just wanted to talk about it because it was such a big deal. And I got so many red flags when nobody wanted to talk about it. And that's when I started looking up on my own. So then I start on this huge path to research. And that's when I get introduced to people like, a lot of the Daily Wire people. So Michael Knowles, Matt Walsh was a big one for me, actually.
What is a woman?
Because, right. Oh my gosh. It was
that one probably had a big effect on you, right?
Goes. And so I started watching all these guys, and I started watching, like, people like Jordan Peterson, and I'm really just starting to understand things from, like, a right, because I'm starting now at this point to see the evil very minimally, but still see it from my perspective being in this situation. I'm like, what they're saying is happening. It's kind of, I'm like patient zero, right? Like it's happening to me. I can't go to a therapist and get any help for this. They just want to transition. They just want me to, like, it's a revolving door. They just want me in and out. They already know the answer, and they just want me to accept the answer, but I wasn't prepared to accept the answer. And anytime I said anything, it was more like it got met with, like, political arguments and stuff. Like, it was almost like, one person was like, it's kind of like internalized transphobia. It's like towards myself.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't understand. So that'll make a mentally unwell person like me want to, like, just end it, because I had no friend in the world. Like, I had nobody who understood anything about what I was going through. And the therapist was not on the table anymore either. And I felt very alone. So I couldn't get out of bed. I literally could not get out of bed. I know that sounds crazy to people who've never experienced it, but I didn't care for the first time in my life if rent got paid. I didn't care because look, when you're in the place where you don't care if you live or die, what does anything else matter?
Yeah. You're
like, I'm prepared not to wake up tomorrow. And you can't understand why I can't get out of my bed. You know what I mean? That's the battle I was in. So I ended up realizing I couldn't get out of my bed. I couldn't move. I was calling out of work. For the first time in my life, I've never done that. I've always been a good worker. I was really struggling in those areas. And I ended up having a neighbor who had methamphetamine. And, when you're in that dark place, once again, I was sitting here basically bargaining with my life. Like, I'm not even going to make it very long anyway. Why not take some meth, get some rent paid so I can, it doesn't have to fall on my parents as much. And because I did worry about that. That was a worry, but not enough of a worry to not do what I was going to do. Because I really thought I was on my final stint there. I was done. And I didn't realize how addiction, in a weird way, addiction actually kept me here longer, which just sounds so weird. It bought me some time in a weird way, because I probably would have tried to kill myself earlier.
Out of bed.
Yeah. And so anyway, long story short, I realized I tried quitting meth several times. I had a buddy from the Bay Area come up and try to babysit me while I was trying to wean off. I couldn't do it. He'd leave and I'd start again. And I realized, okay, I can't do this on my own, because I was really trying to quit without anyone realizing I had relapsed. Yeah. And I was like, I could do this. That nobody has to know. I could still save this. And I just could not. It was the most insidious drug I've ever taken in my life. I was not prepared for this drug. And eventually it got to the point where I told my brother. He was the first one. It's funny, actually. He's the first one I've told a lot of things to. In fact, now I think about it, he was the first person I told about coming out as gay when I was younger. So I don't know what it is about Josh that I've always felt safe telling him things. And so I told him, but I told him I had it under control. And I said, please don't tell mom and dad. But if you have to, I said, I don't feel like it's fair to make you hold on to this. So if you feel like you need to, go ahead and tell them. But I just wanted to say, if you can hold on to it, please hold on to it. Well, eventually I think he held on to it for a while, and then he used his better judgment and he ended up telling them. And then my parents had invited me over for dinner, and I knew something wasn't right. So I just came out and told them I wasn't going to lie to them, and that's when I sweated that out. I was like, okay, I got to get clean. But they all wanted me to go to rehab again. And look, I could not do that again. The shame that I had and thinking here we are again, my family has got to bail me out one more time. I was like, I can't do that. I did not want my mom. We don't have that kind of money anyway. Right. I didn't need everybody pulling together money for me to go to rehab a third time, that. So I was like, no, I got this. I'm going to do this on my own. I ended up doing it in my apartment, sweating it out. I went through oh my gosh. I wasn't prepared for it, but people came over every single day. You refilled me with liquids and, water. And, I literally slept for the first 3-4 days straight, almost. The crash is so intense. And then, I went through, psychosis, which I didn't, the doctor said I was under a medical supervision from Kaiser as well, for the detoxing.
You go through psychosis when you're coming off of meth?
Oh yeah. And I didn't know what that would look like, but I would look through the windows and I thought people were after me. It was pretty gnarly, actually. And so by the 5th day I was done with that aspect of it. But the next 2 months were just brutal. No
energy,
just and I was already a depressed person. Now I'm extra depressed. And this is where I sort of, this is where dying sounds good again. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up deciding that I was done. Yeah, I was going to kill myself. And I actually had written a note to every single person in my family, and I left it on my iPad. I have those notes still. And there were things look, I felt really bad. I really did. I felt really bad in many ways, but I also didn't. It was such a confusing place to be, because I felt like I couldn't figure out how to do life right. I couldn't. And every time I wanted to do better, and I just couldn't. And I don't know why. It was the second I tried, it would blow up in my face again. And then I felt honestly, I just felt like a drain on my family. And I was I know this is going to be hard for them, but in the long run, it'll be, I remember in my letters, I begged my family for forgiveness. I said, I know this is going to be hurtful and I'm really sorry, but I think in the long run, it'll be better for you guys. I truly believed that. Because you're just gonna have to babysit me the rest of your life. I can't figure this life out. I don't know how to life. I don't know how to do it. and I'm in a lot of pain, and I just needed to go away. And I even had it like all mapped out, like it was ready to go. I'm not gonna go into details of anything like that because we don't need to incite, curiosity there. But basically, it was I was right before I was getting ready to do it. Mind you, at this point, my only thought is that the pain just needs to stop. I can't, I'm suffocating here. I literally could not breathe. It felt like I was trapped in a corner. And all of a sudden this thought pops into my head at literally the right time, like the most right time it could have. And the thought was, what if the pain doesn't end here? Like, what if it gets worse, actually? And I just stopped, and I was like, I hadn't thought about that. What if the pain gets worse? And I was like, well, I can't handle that. Like, I don't know what that. And then I felt more suffocated than I ever felt. Like, I literally felt like a caged animal. I felt like so trapped because my out was now no longer an out because I didn't know the answer to that. What if it got worse? That was something I was not prepared to deal with. Like, I could not bear that. Imagine being in worse pain than I'm in right now, except now you're separated from everybody you've ever loved. That was such a terrifying feeling that I didn't know what to do. I was like, but I'm still in pain. I don't know what to do. And that's when I literally dropped to my knees and I begged God to show me he was real.
And this is where we're going to go to locals. Now, if you guys want to hear the rest of the story, you got to pay for it. No, I'm kidding. People would kill us.
That's hilarious. That's good. That's good.
They would kill us. Oh, man.
That's hilarious.
Okay. I didn't mean to do that. It was just too good of an opportunity. So you fall to your knees and you actually say, God, if you're real, you have to.
Oh, I'm like tears streaming down my face. Like, I am a absolute mess. And I said, because here's my thought. My thought was, well, if he's not real, I can kill myself and no guilt. This was still the bargaining chip I had, was like, I'm not putting it off the table, but I need to make sure before I do this. That was kind of like where my head thought was. And so I said, well, I don't know if he's real. And here's the funny thing is, like, I never, in my heart, I knew that if he was real, I would have no problem following him. Because I always saw God as the good and the devil as the bad. Like, I would want to choose good. I guess I don't know if these are stories or like, if it wasn't at this point in my life, it wasn't as real to me as it was when I was a little child. It was very, I just had no idea. I had no idea. And so I ended up basically dropping my knees and I begged him. Like, I have never begged so hard in my life. I probably said it over 30 times, and I'm certain my neighbors heard me because I was screaming it at the top of my lungs. Like, it was not a pretty moment in my life. And I basically, I said, look, Lord, if you are real, I probably didn't say Lord, I said God, because I didn't have, that relationship with him yet. But I said, God, if you're real, you need to show me. And I also said this, I said, but you have to make it very clear to me because I'm very stupid. And I kept saying that. I said, I don't know what's going on. I have no idea what is happening. I said, but I'm a dumb human being. And if you are real, you have to make it obvious. You cannot, like, I have to know. I have to know. I said, please show me you're real. Please, please, please. And before I knew it, I fell asleep. And I don't remember falling asleep. I just kind of ended up waking up the next morning. I was exhausted. I was just emotionally just drained, and I had fallen asleep. And the next morning, I woke up and I felt like I had a weird peace about me, and I didn't connect that to anything at the time, but I do remember thinking at the time, this is an odd way. I feel oddly okay given the night that I just had. Not great, but not like as not defeated. And I think, and I remember this conversation I had with God the night before, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I gotta still know the answer, because I need to know if I can kill myself still, because I'm still thinking that way, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, I gotta probably put in a little bit of effort to this. I don't know what this means, but I I ended up going into my side dresser, and this is like, I didn't know anything was going to happen when I did this, but I don't know what I was doing. I keep a lot of stuff in my side dresser next to my bed, it's like a junk drawer. And that's when I actually ended up finding a rosary, which I didn't know what a rosary was or what the name was or anything like that. But I found a rosary in that drawer. And yeah, I had no idea what it was, but I knew that I knew it had something to do with Josh, not even Catholics. It had something to do with Josh. And so I ended up looking it up on Google, and I was like, that's so weird. And I just had this like pulling in me to like, I can't explain it. It was like this pulling, like, I don't know why I showed so much interest. Nobody, you know, I mean, how long that thing's probably been in there. Who knows? I didn't even know it was in there. And here I am. And I'm like, all of a sudden it seems important. And I don't know why it seems important. I have no reason to think this. But I feel this like pulling to go online. So I go online, I Google it, and I'm like trying to figure out what it is. And there's a lot of like chaplets and rosaries. And I'm like, I don't know. So I'm like counting the beads.
What did you even Google? Like string of beads with the cross?
I actually said Catholic because I knew Josh had just become Catholic like a few years prior. So and I knew it had something to do with him because I knew he had given it to me. And so I think I remember it was something about Catholic beads, a beads Catholic or something like that.
Yeah, that'll get you there. Catholic prayer necklace, that'll get you there. I mean, come on.
And I ended up finding out that it was called a rosary, and I'm sure Josh had told me that at one point, but I mean, I didn't listen to anything he told me clearly. Maybe I should have. And I honestly, it was kind of hard to figure out how to do this, like, to be honest, because they're like, oh, there's 4 mysteries. I don't know what a mystery is. What are you talking about? Like, I have no idea what you're even saying. Like, that was hard to go through to begin with because I was like, what do I pray? There's like 4 different things to pray. What do I pray? And so I ended up figuring out, I ended up doing, I remember specifically the sorrowful mystery. And I prayed it to the best of my ability. I went on like YouTube and I found some videos of people doing it. And then I found another really good website that had it like laid out. And I just read it from the page. And I remember thinking specifically, like, it's kind of like Pascal's wager, you know? It was like, what do I have to lose?
Yeah.
Like, I asked God if he was real, and like, he either is or he isn't. And this isn't going to hurt that. Like, this might help me in figuring that out. I don't know. And so I prayed it, and then I remember just an enormous peace came over me when I prayed it the first time, and I wouldn't have connected that to even the prayer, to be honest, but I guess my body did to some degree, because I kept praying it. And that's weird because I'm not a prayer. I don't pray ever. Like, I haven't my whole life except for when I was a little girl. And so 2 days later, mind you, this happens on a Tuesday. This was a Tuesday. I remember this specifically because it was Tuesday, Friday, Sunday. That's the story. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So 3 days later, I had this incredible urge. Mind you, I've been praying the rosary every day since then. And that's so weird to me. I even know it's weird. Like, I'm sitting there like, wow, why do I keep praying this thing? Like, it's so crazy that I'm praying this thing. Like, but I want to, and I need to, and I can't not do it. It was such a weird thing for me. And so I start, then on the 3rd day, it was Friday, and I had this like incredible urge, like you wouldn't believe. I was like, I need to talk to a priest. Like, I don't know why. I need to figure out if God's real. Is he real? And so I have no idea what I'm going to say to this priest. And so I know Josh goes to a parish here at Sacramento, and I decided to call them up because I texted him. I was like, what church do you go to? He goes, oh, why do you want to know? I was like, none of your business. But no. And he was like, he told me who I was, and I called them, and I was like, hey, I need to talk to a priest. Is there one available? And they're like, yeah, they're kind of busy right now, but we can have one call you back. And I was like, that's fine. And so I had one of them called me back within a few hours. It was nice. And he was like, hi, I heard you wanted to talk to somebody. And I was like, yeah, I really need to talk to somebody. And I said, he was like, well, I can pencil you in for, and he's like said a couple days like later or something. And I was like, no, I really need to talk to somebody today, if that's okay. And I was a little pushy. I didn't mean to be, but I was like, no, like, it has to be like today. Like, I really need to talk to a priest. in person if that's possible. And he goes, oh yeah. And he really arranged it for me. He like, he moved some stuff around. He was like, absolutely. We could do it tonight. Like, how's tonight around 5? And so I came in around 5 o'clock to the parish and I sat down with him and he was like, so what do you want to talk about?
Good for you for pressing him, and God bless him for making the room. Like, really. So
yeah, no, I think he didn't realize the urgency right away, and then he did quickly, and he realized, because our priests are phenomenal. Like they're very attentive, and so I think that he just needed to know how much I needed to talk to somebody. And so anyway, I ended up coming in and I talked to him, and he was like, well, what do you want to talk about? And to be honest with you, I don't know what we talked about. I just told him, I said, I want to know if God's real. And he goes, well, I think he is. And I was like, and we talked about, like, I told him about my story a little bit, like I said, I'm gay and all these things. And I said, I don't know how I fit into all this, and I couldn't really tell you what we talked about. That it just kind of like, we talked for like 2 hours, and I ended up going home and I'm like, okay, that was interesting. I appreciated that. I found it useful. And then he had brought up catechism. He goes, well, we're already like in our catechism classes that have already started at this point. But, if you're interested, we could do private catechesis with you. And I said, well, I don't know. What is that? And he was like, well, it's, where we go through the faith of the church, and then we bring you in. And I said, yeah, but what if I don't want to join? What if I just want to learn about it and I'm not ready to, like, can I still go? Like, can I like opt out at the end and be like, no, it doesn't make sense to me, I'm out? Like, is that? He goes, yeah, well, you could just start if you want, and we'll see how it goes. And I was like, okay.
My God.
Yeah, I was like, all right, let's do that. And so anyway, I go about my business. I end up going home. Mind you, this whole time I'm still praying the rosary. And Friday, Saturday. So I guess 2 days later, on Sunday comes, early morning Sunday. And I drive for Uber sometimes. And that night I was already out till like 3 a.m. because that's the bar scene. That's when you make a lot of good money on Sundays or Saturdays. And so I was already working that time. So I came home around 3 from driving, and I just had this incredible, once again, this urge. It's just like, I can't explain it. It just like came over me, and it was like, I need to see a mass. And can I just explain, like, you have no idea how weird this is for me to be having feelings. It is like, what is happening? Like, but I couldn't, it was like I was being pulled. That's literally how it was. Like, I was literally being pulled in a direction, and I was there for it. Like, I was like, I wanted to be pulled. Like, I don't know what it felt. Anyway.
It's okay. So it's seek and you will find. And so your heart was in the right place, and you're coming across things that, first off, the depression is lifted, and you're able to get out of bed. Right. And it's a combination of all these things happening at the same time. It's such a beautiful thing. So I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, it's okay. It's okay. And so yeah, I get this overwhelming urge to want to see a mass. And so, oh man. So I ended up, once again, I wouldn't have known this then, but now I understand that this is like, I had a significant series of graces that were given to me that I didn't realize were graces. Like, just even the desire to want to see a mass, you know what I mean? Yeah. Cause those are, in many ways, I don't think even my own thoughts. And so I had this desire to go see a mass. And so I looked up the mass things. I'm like, I don't even know when people have church, so I go up and I find the website, and they have a 7 a.m. mass. It's one of the first masses. And I'm like,
you were able to find a mass time on a church website? No way.
I know our TLM is they're right on top of it. They do a really good job with our website. Actually, it's very up to date, which I'm grateful for. And so at 7 a.m. I was like, perfect. I'll go to that one. I'll just stay up. Because I didn't want to go to sleep, or I would have slept in. I knew myself, because I was already tired, So I was like, well, I'll just stay up and I'll go to the first one. I said, nobody goes to mass. Nobody goes to church at that hour anyway. So, and I did not want to see anybody. Like, I was so terrified. You have no idea. Like, the chaos. So I ended up going to the church at 7, and I'm sitting in the parking lot. The chaos that ensued in my brain and in my heart and in my body between the car and the parish doors was like a war you have never seen before. I was like, the second I got there, I had like the most intense spiritual attack in my life of like, you just don't belong here. Like, what are you doing? And mind you, I have a fully buzzed head, you know, so I look like I belong at a pride parade, not like I belong at a Latin Mass church or a church at all. And I'm like, and all these fears, the same fears that kind of filled me from, you know, everything from being a little girl and like, and growing up and being, you know, this whole like 15 years that I'd been through where it was just like suffocating me all of a sudden. It was like everything was just like weighed so heavy. And it was just like, you don't belong here. You don't belong here. And then there's this other thing, this other voice. It was sort of like, it was like guiding me. It was like, no, keep coming, keep walking. And somehow one step kept going, one foot in front of the other. I don't even know how I made it to the doors because I wasn't really engaged in walking. I was more like, I didn't know what was happening. And I ended up making it to the parish doors, and I'm thinking once again, like, I hope no one's here. I don't want to see anybody. I want them to see me. If they see me, they're going to know I don't belong here. And I just couldn't handle that. And so I ended up, you know, going and seeing the sanctuary doors, and I opened the door. Oh my Lord. It was packed. It was absolutely packed. And not only that,
7 a.m. mass.
Yeah, it was such a culture shock because you have all these women wearing veils, and it was just like there's such, and I'm sitting here in jeans and a t-shirt looking like some like, and I'm just like, oh gosh, like I'm terrified to even walk any further. It's so quiet, and it's just it's beautiful, but I just didn't feel beautiful. I didn't feel like I belonged in that beauty. And I was like, I'm messing this up. And so anyway, I end up, and I keep hearing this, like, this feeling, this like pull, and hearing this, like, no, just keep, come in. Right. And it's not auditory, mind you. It's internal. It's all this internal battle. And I see this like bench. I'm like, well, I'm certainly not walking down the pews to find a seat. So I don't know where they think I'm sitting, but I'm not going to, I don't want anyone to see me. Everyone's back to me. I like that. I just want to be anonymous back here. And I felt horribly embarrassed by how I was dressed and what I was in. And so I ended up, there's a pew in the back, a back of the church. It's right by the confession, but it's kind of off to the side. So I'm sitting on it. I'm kind of like, I can like kind of peek in and look around and kind of see in. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, this feels okay. You know, nobody's looking at me. I'm good. And there's this little candle above the sanctuary at the very entrance or the very front. And it's a red candle. And it's lit, and it's one that's hanging above all of them. It's not like, you know, it's a standalone candle, and it's just hanging above sort of everybody. And I start looking at this candle, and I mean, it captivated me. This candle was like, I could not stop staring at it, and it felt safe staring at it. And I just remember in my head hearing, you know, like, just keep looking at me, keep looking at me. And that was the candle. I was just like, my eyes were just on this candle. And then I heard the music, the organ slowly start to play. And I literally lost it. Like, everything in my body. I don't know what happened to me, but something happened to me in that moment, because I had never felt more love in my entire life than I did in that moment. Like, I can't describe it. I thought I knew. It's like it redefines every word, everything you think you've ever known. It redefines it, because I thought I knew love. I had no idea what love was. And it was like that moment I was just being held, and I just fell apart. Like, I was bawling my eyes out, and I couldn't stop. Like, I couldn't even, I was like plugging my nose so I wouldn't make a scene. Like, I was like, you know, it was so bad. I was such a mess. And it was like so weird. It was like, that was the moment that I instantly knew. I was like, he answered my question 5 days ago. I had a question, and he just now answered it. I don't know how. Like it's it's funny because I thought no one's gonna believe me when I tell them like, why do you believe in God now? Oh, because I saw a candle and I cried. Nobody's gonna like. But it's funny. Every Catholic I tell, they're like, oh yeah, it totally makes sense. But it's still to me a wild experience because I literally walked in there a complete skeptic and I left like a complete believer. And it's funny because I didn't even need to know the whys of everything. It was like all the things I had fought against him my whole life. Like, why does this doesn't make sense? Why can't I just love another person? You know, like, why can't I just be with who I want to be with? Why can't, all these things that just, it was like, that didn't matter anymore. I knew he was real. And in that moment, everything, I was prepared to do whatever I had to do to follow him. It was such a powerful moment. I can't describe it. And I wish I felt like I was doing it justice, to be honest. But I mean, it changed my life. And from that point forward, I started catechism. And I haven't looked back. And I was brought into the church September 29th, feast day of St. Michael. And I'm a confirmed Roman Catholic. So
this is so crazy. And now your mom and your dad.
Yeah, my dad's already a confirmed Catholic. My brother, my mom, and my stepdad are working on it right now. The only one I pray for most is my sister. So
I've seen so many family members come in the church, but even you saying you're just overcome with love like that, right? And it's like you went into that place kind of still a little agnostic, but when you left there, you knew from the fiber of your being that God was real. I mean, I had such a similar experience. I've told. I mean, mine was started watching a stupid documentary on the Shroud of Turin. I started it as an agnostic, and by the end of it, I was like, there wasn't a doubt in my heart, because faith really is a gift.
Yeah.
And you have to really understand, like, we all try to make the arguments to convince people, but if a person's heart isn't in the place to hear it, they're not going to be convinced by the arguments. It's not a matter of winning an argument to bring people to the faith. That's why I really don't understand the idea of saying, okay, yeah, well, we believe in evolution. Yeah, well, we believe in that. Don't worry about when somebody's heart is in a place to hear whether God exists or not. God will reveal himself to that person.
Right.
It's not a sophistication. It's not about, that's not what the argument part of it is. Not the hard part. It's a person's disposition in their heart. And are they ready to hear? And you were in a place where you got on your knees and you said, God, you have to show, and I need to know. This can't be some wishy-washy thing. I need to know. And he does reveal himself to those who want to meet him.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I just never it was like a light went on in my head. The best way I could describe it, it's almost like the shackles were just instantly removed, because like I always thought that if God was real, like if I were to believe in God, I would have been won over by an argument. Like somebody would, you know what I mean? Like it would be intellectual conversion first. Like somebody make a good enough argument and I'd be like, oh yeah. Come to find out, my sin for so long had dampened my intellect. So there's that. And the fact that it was so like, it was so instant. It was so like, and it was just, I hate sometimes telling the story because I don't even know the words. It's so frustrating. I want everyone to just feel what that was, because it redefined my whole life. And I don't even know how to adequately describe what happened, but it wasn't until like about a week later that I realized that the church, the candle, when it's lit up in the church, it's, means
it symbolizes the real presence is in the tabernacle.
Yeah.
And
that blew me away. That was just another like, wow, like, are you serious right now?
How does Josh react when you tell him this scenario? like is he just like, wait, what?
He often looks at me sometimes when I say things, and he'll be like, who are you and what have you done with my sister? Like he does. I think it's weird for all of us. I mean, look, if you had even known who I was, and I'm grateful none of you guys did know who I was, because I was not a very good person, but if you had known, I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, almost instantly. And it's funny, actually. I'll be honest with you. I've actually already I went through a lot of struggles in the beginning. It wasn't there for my life to go from living how I wanted to live to now, because it's not just becoming Catholic. Now there's like a whole new world of a lot has got to change.
Yeah.
And that's not easy either. And, with that, there's fear. There's a lot of fear in that. It's like, am I going to be alone forever? That was my biggest fear in the beginning. Am I going to be alone forever? That was like, now I don't worry about that at all. It honestly does not even bother me. But that was in the beginning, it was like a huge fear. It was like, wow, like, I'm going to be alone forever. I'm never going to be able to have, these things. That's fine. But I still knew I was going to give it up. I had no problem giving it up. And that's the weirdest thing is like when you're so terrified of certain things, but yet you're still like, it didn't faze me to give it up. It just was hard in a different way. Cause I didn't know all the answers. I didn't have the understanding of like how this would look. And meanwhile, I was still getting, after that same weekend, I was still getting texts from friends asking me if I want to go to like pride parades and stuff. And I'm like, no, I gotta go to church. Sorry, I can't, and they know I don't go to those anyway, but they always asked. But anyway, yeah. So, I'm grateful. I'm beyond grateful. I ask God often why,
now it's okay. So now you have to learn the culture, like the Catholic culture, right? Like it's because you're coming from a place that my upbringing is thoroughly Catholic,
right?
I mean, I have 8 siblings. My parents were playing music at the church growing up. I mean, I am thoroughly Catholic. So for me, it's very different for that I'm cradle.
Right.
But you're coming in where it's like, I mean, you said you walked in and you're like, oh my goodness, what is going on in this place? Like you have to learn these little things about all the little traditions we have. You haven't celebrated your first Lent.
No, yeah.
Not even Advent yet either.
Well, I didn't even know they had like feast days and there's so
you're
much.
Gonna be so excited.
I learn something every day.
It's so much to learn. You'll never exhaust the riches of our faith. It's such a deep like just a well of so many things that will like light your heart on fire. There's so many things that you'll listen to, and like you haven't listened to Peter Kreeft yet. There's so many things I'm going to send you.
Yeah, please do. Please do. No, it's been a huge, it's funny actually, because in the beginning that was one of the overwhelms. I was so overwhelmed, like I don't even know where to start. And I will say that the two things I leaned on absolutely the most was adoration and the rosary. Those are the two things that I knew I could do without being able to take communion and participating in the sacraments. Yeah. I love adoration because I learned so much there. And that's where like the natural law, just like I had another moment in adoration where the natural law just, it seems like, so it's funny because I noticed there's like this divide in how we think. And it's like, seems like for people who get the natural law, it makes sense. Like it makes sense to them. But then there's people like me who have gone their whole life and who have denied the natural law. And it's not as clear as you think it might be for people who have lived against that way.
Yeah.
Because look, once again, when we're out there, we're not subject to any rules. So you have to convince us that there's a set of rules that are good for us first before we even know how those rules make sense for us. Yeah. And so it was so interesting. I remember the day I called my brother after adoration and I was so excited because I was like, I get this now. I totally get this. Like it was weird, but yeah. So I lean on those two things the most, and I don't take adoration for granted. That's for sure.
Was your first general confession hard?
Ooh, I didn't think it would be because I'm a pretty open book. It was like, what, like I've already done my 5th step and like, all that stuff in recovery programs. I didn't really see it as a hard thing, but it actually was. So after I had that experience, right, I actually have gone through quite a bit of interesting experiences since. I've had a lot of spiritual attacks to the point where I'm actually I work with some of our priests to, I keep track of things and things that happen in case they become something bigger eventually. But you know, I have I was having a lot of really demonic dreams for a while that were happening consistently on the same date, same month, every day. It was a lot of weird things like that. And so I kind of started realizing that if I just prayed the rosary when things like that happened, it would stop. And so I got used to doing that. And so I was doing pretty good. And then right before, about a week prior to me receiving my first communion, I had the worst. I was just so full of fear, dude. Like I don't know what came over me, but I was just it was almost to the point where it was like, well, you don't have to become Catholic. And I was like, no, you do have to become Catholic. It was like, those are the only two choices. And obviously I knew the answer, so it wasn't really a choice. But I ended up doing it. And of course, then the enormous freedom that came afterwards, the absolute peace and the gratitude that comes with gaining a new slate, like, was obviously incomprehensible. So I'm grateful for that. But yeah, it was hard. It was rough for me initially, but we got through it.
Nancy, this story.
I know.
This story. I'm so glad we got you on. First off, one of our viewers gave us a $200 tip and asked for this interview.
What?
So they were like, when they heard you were converting,
and I don't see them in the chat tonight.
I don't even
either.
see them in the chat tonight. I'm so mad.
That's funny. That's funny.
But yeah, she gave us $200 because she wanted to hear your conversion story, and it was just, I knew it was going to be a great one. I mean, all I've been watching in the comments tonight is this is the most amazing conversion story I've ever heard. I really think, first off, you're going to be asked to do a lot of things, right? So make sure you pace yourself, because it is overwhelming when you first become Catholic. I'm glad we were your first show. I really am.
I've actually already been asked by a lot of other people so far, and I'm honestly taking it slow. I wanted to do your podcast because I love your guys' podcast, and I love you guys, and you know, my brother, and so, but I don't intend to do too much too soon, because this is new for me. This is still really new. People, you know, who's my confirmation saint? Saint Michael, the Archangel, which is a whole nother story in itself. But yeah, so yeah, that's good advice, because I don't know. I'll pray about it.
I think you could tell this story. Like, this is such a beautiful, uplifting story, and I think a lot of people I think you're going to bring a lot of people hope. I think a lot of people are struggling with this, Nancy. I don't think you're alone. I really do think a lot of people are struggling with this. I think it's such a crazy time that we live in, and I think that your story is going to touch a lot of people's hearts, and I'm so glad that you told it on our channel. I really am. I honestly, I've had a headache for the past half an hour, and I'm like, just please, God, get me through this. You have no idea.
Oh no!
So anybody sees me just like rubbing my head like this, I haven't gotten one of these on air since we did trivia. Like, that's how long ago it's been, and I don't know why it just came over me, but I'm like, I have to get through this. I have to listen to this. This is so amazing. But what a beautiful story. I'm so glad that you came on and told it to us, Nancy.
Well, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad this was my first too. So,
guys, I think a lot of us know people in our lives that might be struggling with anything. I mean, I know people I'm going to send this to. I think this is one of those stories that it's such an uplifting and relatable story for so many people, that even if it's, forget the rainbow and trans stuff, the drug use. I mean, I empathize with that story so much, just from my own experience, from my family's experience. And the depression too. A lot of people struggle with depression. Your story hits so many things that people are going to be touched by, Nancy. I'm so grateful that God brought you home.
Thank you. Me too. Me
This
too.
has been such a great show.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate it.
Do you mind sharing the first name of your sister and her husband so that we can pray for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Her name is Taylor and Evan.
And then you and Josh just had a family member that had a tragedy, right?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Their name is Cedric, my cousin Cedric.
So-
He just lost his mom. So
So this is the GoFundMe for that family there. So if you guys have any ability to support them, please head over there and do that. At the very least, please pray for them.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, they have funeral expenses to cover. They have, I mean, it's a pretty horrible. Somebody robbed a Tesla
Mhm.
and hit their minivan and killed them. It's a pretty terrible story. So if you guys can help out in any way that you can, please do. And I'm glad that you weren't nervous for this, because I knew once you started talking, and I knew once I just knew we'd be fine together.
I know. I always do this. I always overthink things. I'm still working on that.
Yeah, well, I told you, but like my first time for my first live show, I was a nervous wreck. So I believe me, I understand that first appearance. So, all right, Nancy, we're gonna get you back on.
Yeah, for sure.
And we'll get an update from you soon. We'll maybe I'm gonna, first of all, I have to get your email and stuff, but I can send you stuff on Twitter too. But I'm gonna send you talks, because there are so many talks for early on in my conversion that lit my heart on fire that
Wow.
I can't wait to send you if you have time
Please
to listen
do.
to something. So
I literally listen to nothing but Catholic stuff all day. That's how much there is to learn.
there really is. There's so
I'm
many good
constantly
ones,
going.
especially like on deep scripture studies that'll connect things for you. They're so
Yeah.
good. So
Yeah, please send anything you have. I'll be grateful for. And I can get you all my extra information on there as well.
all right, excellent. All right, guys, we're gonna go. Please hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you guys want, we have a lot of bonus content over on our locals page. Some of that's free, some of them is behind a paywall. On Saturday, we have Mark Lambert from the Catholic Herald. That's our next show. So Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern, we have Mark Lambert from the Catholic Herald. I want to talk to him. He's on the show with Gavin Ashenden. They do the Catholic Unscripted. Yeah, Catholic Unscripted. So I wanted to talk to him. So we will see you guys on Saturday.
All right. Hope you're head.